Brahma Gurur Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwaraha Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Bandhus Cha Sakha Tvameva Vidya Dravinam Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So I want to welcome you all, and where we are in our scripture is Shankara has started to introduce the topic of the fit student to be adhikari. And the first important idea that he says is you have to have a keen memory. The word here is medha. And the exoteric meaning is you're able to remember what the Guru says. You're able to perhaps memorize some of your favorite verses from scripture. But the deeper meaning is we're able to apply the teaching at the appropriate moment in our lives. So, for example, we may get a teaching that the yogi's mind is samadrishta, equal, has equal vision in heat and cold, sukham dukham cha, pleasure and suffering, honor and dishonor, siddha asiddha cha. Oh yeah, I can remember that. And then you go to work and your boss says you did a crappy job on a project. And you go, ah! And you never think, oh, I have to have equal vision in honor and dishonor. Oops. So the thing to do, for example, whatever the boss says, positive or negative, let it pass through. So medha, being able to apply the teaching at the moment that it's appropriate in our life. We talked a little bit about the principle of Guru. The physical teacher is a temporary psychological device. Guru shows up everywhere. So if you've got problems in a relationship, issues with your family, or some problem at work, give thanks. That's your guru. And what does it teach us? To let go and keep our hearts open. So medha, keen memory. We talked about having an understanding of the world outside and the world within. Knowledge of the world outside and an understanding of the world within. So we need to know what the world can deliver and what it can't. So we don't have illusions about this. If we don't, as we begin these practices of letting go, there'll be a part of our mind saying, I'm not having any fun. I'm doing yoga and it's just so miserable. And that's not productive. The way in which we give up our attachment to the world is through insight, not through some moral position or through willpower. And then again, an understanding of the world within, meaning we have to begin to become familiar with understanding our own psychology. So we know, what are my issues? What are the patterns that keep showing up in my life that tyrannize me? Begin to see them for what they are, work through them. And then Shankara enumerated the 4 qualifications, and he says something very important. He says, success in spiritual endeavors is entirely due to the degree of the qualifications of the fit student. Other factors such as time and place, while important, while helpful, are fundamentally secondary. So the locus of power is my own, what we call purushartha, self-effort. In Gita, Krishna says a person raises themselves into the self by themselves. We do the sadhana. All right, so Deepa, we finished with, was it 17 last week?
Yes.
So we're now on 18, and Punit is going to chant this evening.
साधनान्यत्र चत्वारि कथितानि मनीषिभिः येषु सत्स्वेव सन्निष्ठा यद्भावेन सिद्ध्यति. Great sages have spoken of 4 qualifications for attainment, which when present, one succeeds in the realization of Brahman, and in the absence of which the goal is not gained.
So what Shankara is saying here is, if we are having difficulty in our sadhana, if realization of the self is not happening, go back and look at the qualifications of a fit student. Swamiji used to say, we need a tune-up the mind is what we need to do. Like a car. If the engine's running rough, you need to go to the mechanic and give it a tune-up. So if we're having difficulty in our spiritual practice, the place where we need to look is there one of the qualifications that I'm a little weak in? Do I need to work on this a little bit more? Now, All of yoga is becoming a fit student. It isn't that you become a fit student and then engage in some other process. Once you are a fit student, realization is as clear to you as a fruit in the palm of your hand. So all of our work is to become adhikari, a fit student. Any thoughts on this? Any questions? 19.
Adav nitya nityasvastu viveka pariganyate iha mutra phala bhoga viragasta danantaram shama deshat kasampattir mumukshutva iti sputam. While enumerating the qualifications, first we count the ability to discriminate between the real and the unreal. Next comes a spirit of detachment from the enjoyment of the fruits of action here and hereafter. After that is the group of 6 essentials, such as Shama, and last is undoubtedly a burning desire for liberation.
Yes, so now he's enumerated what these 4 qualifications are. For the Western students, you do not need to know them in Sanskrit, but you might want to. The first is Viveka, which is discrimination. The second is Vairagya, dispassion or detachment. The third is a group of 6. Here he calls it Shamadi Guna, qualities of Shama, etc. Adi means the first of a series. So a lot of times you see Shankara called Adi Shankara. This means he's the first dude we know of, or we decided to call Shankara. So Shankara is a nickname for Lord Shiva, by the way. So the group of 6, qualities of Shama, etc. And last is Mumukshutva, the burning desire for liberation. Viveka, Vairagya, Shamadi Guna, Mumukshutva. All right, number 20.
Brahma satyam jagan mithye yatve rupam vinishrayah soyam nitya nityavastu viveka samudahritah. A firm conviction of the intellect that Brahman alone is real and the phenomenal world is unreal is known as discrimination between the real and the unreal.
So we have a very, very famous saying that Shankara has used here. Brahman Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahman, ultimate reality, the ground of being alone is real. Satyam is, has existence. The Jagat, that's the phenomenal world. We call it the Jagat because it goes Jagat, 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 Jagat. It's always moving. Jagan Mithya. Mithya means illusion. It seems to be there, but what it is not what it seems to be. Brahman Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahman alone is real. The Jagat, the phenomenal world, is illusion, is unreal. And this is known as Nitya, with an N, not an M, Anitya Viveka. Discrimination between, Nitya. How do you translate Nitya? Here he says between the real and the unreal. Nitya actually means eternal, but it doesn't mean very, very old. It doesn't mean ancient. Nitya means eternal outside of time and space. So Viveka is the firm conviction in the intellect. Doesn't mean we've realized it yet, but we start with this conviction. The discrimination between the eternal and the non-eternal, between the real and the unreal, is that Brahman alone is. And the phenomenal world is illusory, or better put, the way I perceive the phenomenal world is an illusion. What do I mean by this? Train tracks meeting in the distance. Seen, but not real. The bowl of the sky painted blue. Seen, but not real. The rainbow placed in the sky, seeming to put its end in a field over yonder. Seen, but not real. Mirage waters in the desert. Seen, but not real. We have all these various examples from our daily lives where what our senses report to us is not what's really there. So Vedanta does not deny our sense perception. Of course we're seeing a world. Of course my sense perception is the air quality sucks. Of course my senses perceive that there's fires burning. We never say, oh, it's not happening, it's not happening, it's not happening. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is what's really going on is something very different than what the ordinary person thinks is going on. We're going to go into what's real and what's illusion far more deeply in the class. So why should we believe this? Well, he basically says this is what the scriptures tell us to start with. So Swamiji used to say blind faith is stupid faith and will fail you in a crisis. What we want to do with these ideas is see them as scientific hypotheses. I like to tell the story. I was like in 7th or 8th grade, and we were studying chemistry. And the teacher said that water, which is wet, is made up of 2 elements, hydrogen and oxygen, which actually are gases. And what we would do is we had this big square battery. I think it was like had lots of volts. I don't know what it was. So you put the electrodes in the water, a positive and a negative from the battery, and we had these beakers that you put upside down over them. And you ran a current into the water, and that caused the water to separate into oxygen and hydrogen, which are colorless. You couldn't see them. And then the teacher said, get your Bunsen burner and set it near the one with the hydrogen and watch what happens. Sure enough, drip, 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 because the fire caused the hydrogen to reoxidize and become water. To a kid, this made no sense. How can water, which is wet, turn into gases? And how can you ignite a gas and what happens is water comes out? That just seemed impossible. I may have forgotten it. Did we light the oxygen? Did we light the hydrogen? I can't remember which one. It must have been the hydrogen. Anyway, so it seemed almost like magic to me. But we started with a hypothesis, and then we performed an experiment to prove or disprove the hypothesis. So this is how you ought to do your yoga. Don't take anything for granted, but contempt prior to investigation is unscientific. So, take this as a hypothesis. Brahman Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahman, or the ground of being alone, is real. The phenomenal world, though perceived, is not what I think it is. My perception of it, the way I understand it, is illusory. That's where we start. That's called Viveka, discrimination. Any questions about this before we go on? It's very important to understand this first principle.
How do you cultivate this principle, Jim, and firmly believe it?
Say again?
How do you firmly believe this principle?
We'll get into it.
Okay.
We'll get into it. All right.
So,
Next
Jim,
one.
I've got a question for you
Please.
on that
Is
one.
that Vladimir?
This is David.
Hi, David.
Hi there. You were saying that that nitya means eternal.
Yes. There are two words. There's mithya with an M and nitya with an N.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one uses mithya with an M, which means illusion. The second one uses nitya with an N, which means eternal.
Okay. So what would be the term that's used for real as opposed to eternal?
Satyam.
Satyam. Okay. And does that comes into this conversation as well?
Brahman Satyam.
Okay.
Brahman alone is. When we have the three great words we use to indicate reality, Sat, Chit, Ananda. First one, Sat, means it's from the verb to be. It is. It has real existence. So, for example, if I look up at the clouds in the sky and I go, oh, look, it looks just like a dragon. There's a dragon in the sky. Is there a real dragon in the sky? Or is it an appearance? Is it an illusion? My senses are reporting a dragon in the sky. What it is a cloud formation. Where's the dragon? In my mind. Does that make it a little clearer?
Yes. And
Go
so
on.
so Sat and Satyam, they share the same root.
Exactly.
Okay, and one is then a
I think, isn't that right? That's the verb asti. Puneet?
Sorry, say that again.
Isn't the root asti for sat?
For is, yeah.
Be?
To be is asti, correct.
Yeah. So that's the verb form from which they come.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? So it's a little richer in the Sanskrit than in the English translation. The firm conviction in the intellect that Brahman alone is real and that the phenomenal world is unreal or illusory, or my perception of it, my understanding of it is not what it really is. That's termed discrimination between the real and the unreal. All right, next one, please, Puneet.
We're on 21. Tadvairagyam jihasaya darshan shravanadibihi tehadi brahma paryante yannitye bhogavastoni. That desire to give up all transitory enjoyments gained through seeing, hearing, and so on, and also experiences gained through equipments ranging from a mortal body to the form of Brahma is called detachment.
Yes, so the term here is vairagya. Vairagya. It's not shutting down my feeling nature. And again, back in the earlier classes, I always use the example of the bicycle and the tricycle. When you were a little kid, you had a tricycle. Oh, I love my tricycle. You drive around the driveway. And then when you get older, you get a two-wheeled bike. And you learn to ride it. What happens to your desire for the tricycle? Gone. Sits there in the garage. If you've got a younger sibling, they get to play with it. If not, in time, it goes to the Goodwill or something like that. So real vairagya is a transcendence of our ordinary sense of passion. Raga is the root, passion. It's not a bad thing. What do we call the melodic formula that we use in Indian music? If Vivek were here, he might sing for us on evening. What's the tune called? A raga, yes. Same word, same word. So it's not negative. It just is kind of what we do as people. We're passionate. We're passionate. But what vairagya is about is taking our passion, our love, to something deeper, something fuller. And here the verse divides this into two areas. The first has to do with our attachment to stuff that we experience through the senses. So it's not so much that I'm not supposed to enjoy anymore. It's got a nuance to it. It's the attachment. It's the attachment. For example, if you go out to Ocean Beach and you watch a beautiful sunset, and the clouds are all lit up with colors, and the sun dips into the ocean and turns it gold, and it's just unearthly beautiful. You enjoy it. But do you need to take a sunset home with you and put it on your wall? Do you go on to Amazon.com to buy sunsets so you can own one? No one can own a sunset. Swami Tapovanam illustrated this to Swamiji this way. They're up in the Himalayas, and he says, look at the mountains in the distance. The vast Himalayas come going up 25,000, 30,000 feet. And Tapovanam said, aren't they beautiful? And somebody said, yes. He says, can you possess a mountain? So here it's not so much that we don't enjoy. That's a misunderstanding of the teaching. It means we're not attached to our enjoyments. Can we let go, let go, let go? And do I run after enjoyments thinking that's what's going to make me happy? That's 95 cents worth of work for a nickel's worth of pleasure. We'll get into that more fully. But to understand that whole way of being in the world, we call this bhoga. A person who practices bhoga is called a bhogi. It's not a golfing term, it's a yoga term. So both the bhogi and the yogi want happiness. The bhogi's view of the world is, I want to satisfy as many desires as possible. The end result is more desires, more compulsion. The yogi also wants to be happy, but they approach life in a manner to reduce the number of desires entertained. So we're left with far more space, far more freedom. We're not tyrannized by our compulsions, by our cravings. So that's the first part. Then here he says also to be detached from any form, starting with the body, deha, up into including the form of Brahma, the creator. So this means to renounce any personal identification. Now, what do we mean by Brahma, the creator? That's wanting to be a powerful, important person. I am powerful. I am above the law. I'm president of the company. Or I started my own company. Why do you want to start a company? I don't know. My friends are all starting their companies. Keeping up with other people. I want to get married. Why do you want to get married? Oh, my friends are getting married. These are ideas of self to which we get attached. So not only detachment from enjoyments through the senses, but also the willingness to renounce all of our identifications with any idea of self. This is termed vairagya. Any questions about vairagya? Puneet, would you please read the English one more time so people get the idea?
That desire to give up all transitory enjoyments gained through seeing, hearing, and so on, and also experiences gained through equipments ranging from a mortal body to the form of Brahma is called detachment.
Yes. All right. Viveka, vairagya. Some teachers think of it as these are the two wings of the bird that takes us to the infinite. You've got Viveka and you've got vairagya. It goes tap, 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 tap. Now, when I was a young kid, we used to raise chickens. Hard to believe. Can you see me raising chickens? Now, if you didn't want the chickens to fly away, because chickens can fly, you have to clip their wings. Just take some scissors. They don't have any tissue. It's like getting a haircut. You just clip the flight feathers. But you don't have to clip both wings. You only have to clip one wing. So then when the chicken tries to fly, it goes, comes back down to the ground. So in our flight to the infinite, make sure you have both wings going. If you have Viveka, but your Vairagya is weak, or you may have this supreme sense of renunciation, but you're not too good at discrimination. So we need both. Capacity to discriminate between the real and the unreal, which then matures into Vairagya, the willingness to let go of my infatuation with the world and all forms of self. Why? Because the Viveka shows me that it's causing me to suffer. That's the inspiration to doing the renunciation, the detachment, the Vairagya.
What do you take as being able to see your thoughts clearly, and not interacting with like a selfish compulsion or something? Because I've noticed that I've been able
That
to.
is a classic example of those two. So if you
it's both.
see,
Are you saying it's both?
Pardon me?
Are you saying it's both? Because I
Yes.
took it as I took it as I took that as Viveka, when I was able to not interact with the thought. You know, when I was able, because something it says in the Rig Veda is when
Let's not go into
by,
Rig Veda.
Okay,
Let's
I'm
deal
sorry.
with what you just said. Hang on and let me break it apart for you. So the fact that you can see that it's just a thought and that it's not real, that's the Viveka. Your decision to not get involved with it, that's your Vairagya.
Thank you. I took that as Viveka. I didn't take it as Vairagya.
Both.
Okay, yeah. It's both.
You see,
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
Viveka, oh yes, this is not real. This is causing me suffering.
Mhm.
Now, what you had was the natural maturing of Vairagya. Once you see what's going on, then you can let go.
Well, I've noticed I have so many thoughts that don't serve me. I have so many thoughts that I take as important that cause me and other people problems. And so much of it's just about not interacting with those thoughts and letting
Yes.
them do, you know, just
But
detaching
the
from them.
choice to not interact, that's your Vairagya.
That's okay. I see. Okay, thank you.
That you can see that they're not serving you, that's Viveka. And you and I have had this conversation before, Justin. Years ago, you thought those thoughts were real, and you thought it was about stuff on the outside. You thought if you had the feeling or thought, you had to act on it or say something.
Well, I had no ability not to, really. It had complete control over me.
You had no Vairagya.
Yeah. I guess I didn't today at the grocery store either, but that's another topic.
No, good illustration. Good illustration.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions on Viveka and Vairagya? And what you will find is these processes will get subtler and subtler. The more your mind slows down as the result of your Vairagya, the clearer your discrimination will be. The clearer your discrimination, the greater your ability to let go of things that cause you to suffer. The more you let go of those things, the quieter your mind gets, which means your Viveka becomes even clearer. So they build on one another. They build on one another. All right, next one, please, Puneet.
22. Virajya vishaye vratat dosha drishtaya murmuhu swalakshaye niyatavastha manasa shama uchyate. The peaceful state of mind when it rests constantly upon the contemplation of the goal after having again and again detached itself from the chaos of the sense objects through a process of continuous observation of their defects is called shama.
So shama is my ability to pull the energy of my mind out of its compulsive extroversion into the sense objects. So, let me see if I can give an example. So, I'm at Whole Foods, and I'm shopping for this, and I'm shopping for that. And all of a sudden, I pass by the dessert case. And there's a great big huge cheesecake with a strawberry on top and chocolate all over it. And I go, ugh, and I want it. You could almost feel the energy leave you and rub all over the object. If you're young, you may find this when you see an attractive man or an attractive woman. You know, I can remember when youngsters had the swivel heads. So two people are walking down the sidewalk and they pass each other. And the next thing you know, their heads both turn. They look at each other. Then the smile comes. That's never happened to you guys, has it? Why? Shh, the energy's going out. So what you want to do is practice keeping that inside. Somebody used to use the term introverted. You don't hear mean introversion like Myers-Briggs. You mean keeping it inside, keeping the mind tuned up so it's not gushing out towards the objects of the senses. Why? Because we need to begin a practice of meditation in action. Being able to keep the mind in that tuned up state while we are functioning in the world. So, when I was in the ashram in the Hague and practicing my Shama, I'd go over to Golden Gate Park and I'd practice. When I'm looking at a bush, I'm just looking at the bush. When I look at a piece of paper on the sidewalk, and it's a piece of paper. And I look at the people playing baseball, and it's just people playing baseball. And then I look at the dog poop on the lawn, and it's just dog poop. Without this rush of like and dislike, keeping it all tuned in, tuned up, reined in. This is really hard. So we start by doing it with short intervals of time. You start by maybe taking a walk in your neighborhood and practice keeping your mind as empty and energy as inside as possible. And then we expand this, So not letting the energy gush out in the presence of desirable sense objects, or when it goes with undesirable sense objects. For example, can you walk by a homeless encampment with all the body smells and the trash and the people, and just look and see what's there without the compulsion to look away? This is your shama. Any questions about shama? Now we've finished our first two qualifications. We're now dealing with the group of 6, the first of which is shama. All right, next one, please, Puneet.
विषयेभ्य परावर्त्य स्थापनं स्वस्वगोलके उभयेषामि इन्द्रियाणां सदम परिकीर्तितः बाह्यानालम्बनं वृत्तेर् एषो परितिरुक्तमा. Excuse me. Steering both kinds of sense organs of knowledge and action away from their sense objects and placing them in their respective centers of activity is called Dhamma, self-control. The best uparati,
Yes.
self-withdrawal.
Okay, I'm sorry. I forgot this has 2 ideas. So there's Dhamma, and then going on to Uparati, please.
The
Best Uparati.
uparati, self-withdrawal, is that condition of the thought waves in which they are free from the influences of external objects.
Yes, so Dhamma is similar to Shama. The major difference is when my mind is pushed out towards the sense objects from something inside. So if I'm at home, and let's say I start to think about Ben and Jerry's ice cream, Chunky Monkey, oh, that would be so good. If I'm not disciplined, the next thing I know is I'm off to the store to buy some. So it wasn't the object in front of me that caused my mind to extrovert. It was the memory of something in the past, which then pushed my mind out towards the sense objects. So when those things arise, we work on keeping your mind introverted. Now, the next one he covers is uparati, which means sense withdrawal. We have the same word that shows up in the Hatha Yoga tradition, where you have the yamas and the niyamas, then you have asana, then you have pranayama, and then pratyahara. Isn't that sense withdrawal? Those of you who take yoga? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so uparati and pratyahara are the same thing. So the metaphor that Krishna uses in Gita, being able to withdraw all your senses like a turtle or a tortoise withdraws its limbs. And we usually think of this as necessary requirement in meditation. Oh, Jim, I can't meditate because there's too much traffic outside. Nonsense. You have to be able to withdraw your attention from the disturbances of the external world. Now, Shankara says uparati is important, but the best uparati is when your shama and your dhamma have matured. You can function in and through the world, and what you see or hear, etc., doesn't agitate the thought waves. You want to have a mind like a sieve, just letting everything pass through. Just let it all pass through. And I promise you, the Lord will bring you the most annoying people. Perfect for you. Where you're going to want to react. Don't I have a right to be angry? Frankly, nowhere in any of the yoga scriptures I've ever seen a discussion of rights. It's irrelevant. Justifiable upset. No. The world may say it's justifiable. I was abused. And today, whatever goes on, positive or negative, let it pass through. Don't let it land. I'm going to give you a secret. Everybody, or most people, are more than willing to renounce their suffering. What we don't want to renounce is our ego strokes, the approval, the good stuff. So if someone at the office says, oh, you did such good work on this project, nobody's as smart as you, and you go, yeah. You're already lost. Because when, not if, because it's going to happen, when someone's critical, you're already identified. You're already attached. Then it's tears. So when the positive stuff comes your way, let it pass through. And the negative stuff, let it pass through. There's a popular slogan, what other people think of me is none of my business. Of course, what I think of other people is none of their business either. So the Shama and the Dhamma culminate in this best sense withdrawal, when the sense objects no longer cause the thought waves to agitate. One of my favorite stories, Swamiji was being driven in a car, and he used to like to ride shotgun. He would sit in the front in the passenger seat. And my dear friend Vilasini was his personal assistant for several years when she was very young. And she was in the back seat, and there was another person in the back seat with her. And when Swamiji would scoop you up and keep you close, you better stay in meditation or he'd find some way to poke at you. She was very deep, practicing her Shama and Dhamma and Upadati. And the person next to her was just yabbering along, trying to engage her in conversation. And Vilasini was being polite. And finally, Swamiji turns around and he says, "Will you shut up? Can't you see she's in meditation?" if you can tune up the mind. Shama, not letting the sense objects on the outside disturb you, keeping your attention tuned up. Dhamma, not letting thoughts from the past or memories push your mind out, keeping it
Good night.
in control.
Okay.
Was there a question there? Hello?
No,
Yes,
David's not on. David's not on mute. I think someone's.
Yeah, no,
trying to talk.
I do have a question as well. Sorry. So what I'm noticing coming up for me in this conversation is I spend a lot of time chasing after my daughters. No, did I lose connection here?
No, I can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay. And I find myself kind of my attention just like always going out, and it seems like one thing after another. Like it's like, stop jumping off that thing, don't do this, don't do that. And I feel like getting kind of like frustrated and upset. And it seems like, and I'm just trying to think to myself, like, how do I go about, what would be another way to go about, interacting with my children, and how do I be in that situation? I think it would be more reflective.
It's much more difficult because you're evolutionarily programmed to have a long psychic umbilical cord. Fathers have an umbilical cord as well as mothers. So it's hard, David, because you're evolutionarily programmed to be very concerned about them. But the practice is, can you keep your serenity while you're engaged in raising your children? And that means stop doing this, etc., to be able to do it without getting upset inside. Easier said than done. I don't know if that was helpful. Are you there, David?
Yes. Yeah, that is helpful. I mean, I appreciate the I appreciate the acknowledgement of the challenge.
Yeah.
Because it does really seem hard. And I think maybe it's just
but cut
being
yourself
aware
some
of when I'm getting emotionally hooked, and be able to kind of take that moment to step back and breathe and think about, okay, how can I react, or how can I interact without reacting, perhaps.
Would you want a teacher at school to be reacting to your children?
Absolutely not. No.
How would you like them to be treating your children in the classroom?
Mm-hmm.
How old are the girls now?
They are 5 and 8.
And especially like the 5-year-old. She's really young. She's probably really rambunctious, isn't she?
Yeah, they both are, especially after 3 days indoors from the smoke.
But imagine they were at school and they'd had too much sugar and they were bouncing off the walls. How would you want the teacher to treat them? Would you want them to yell at them? Get all emotional?
No. I would want them to be, firm, but fair. And yeah.
Now, if you were a teacher and you had 30 of them, you'd in the day ready for a funny farm if you got that reactive with every child. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I
Let's draw a
remember going
parallel.
into.
So how many different people have you dealt with in designing and building homes and properties and stuff like that in your career?
Oh, I don't know.
Dozens,
Maybe a couple
hundreds?
hundred.
Yeah.
Maybe 100, something like that. Yeah.
And how many of them have had a hissy fit because they didn't get what they wanted or their expectation was different?
I don't know. Maybe a third of them.
Uh-huh. And I bet when you first started out in the business, that kind of upset you. And I bet you deal with it very differently now.
Yeah, I would say it was up till recently. I mean, I would say it always was somewhat upsetting,
Okay.
but not as upsetting.
Meaning you've developed some Viveka and Vairagya. So you were able to detach emotionally to some degree, be solution oriented, do problem solving, don't take it personally, etc. Now, let me give you the assignment, David. This is hard. I'm not sure I'd start off with your kids. Start off with a walk in the park. Let Gloria deal with the kids for a few minutes while you do this practice. Try doing it going to the store and not getting, extroverted around the things in the store, not getting extroverted when you're in the checkout line. And start with something simple. Does that make sense?
Yes, it definitely does.
Okay. Deepa, or you're not doing it. It's Puneet. Which verse did we just complete?
We finished 23, so we're gonna do 24 next.
Okay, it's now time to stop, and we have a time 10 minutes for questions. So please ask questions. These have been good ones so far. Anybody else have other questions?
You said nowhere in any literature that allows us to have like justifiable anger or something like that.
No, I did not say that. I said
I'm sorry.
Nothing in the yoga scriptures deals with the question of rights.
Rights, okay.
I have not ever seen a teaching on rights. We have lots and lots of teaching on duty, but I have yet to see a teaching on rights. That's a rather modern Western concept.
What do you mean by rights exactly? Like things to
I
get through
have
laws,
a right
or
to be angry, or I have a right to that's I have a right to have my needs met.
I thought that's what you were talking about when you said when I said justifiable anger. That's like
That's just one.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean there's not lots of scriptures about guys who get angry.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I thought the Gita was all about that. I mean, like, I don't know, like going to battle.
Basically, Krishna says, cool your jets. Don't fight from a place of anger.
Okay. Thank you.
Be cool. Be a warrior. A soldier who is going into battle with a berserker consciousness is not usually a very effective fighter. The one who's following his or her training and is clear and cool enough to do what's appropriate in action. Those are the best soldiers.
Okay. I don't know. I found myself getting justifiably angry today at the grocery store, and I was telling.
You quit speaking? Are you thinking, or did you get muted? Hello? Did the call drop?
No, we can hear
You
you.
froze. You froze for a little while.
I froze or Justin froze?
Jim, your screen is frozen, but I can hear you talk now.
Okay, well, your voice cut out, so go ahead
Okay.
and ask your question again. You were in the
Well,
grocery
no,
store.
I was in the grocery store and someone wanted to save her spot in line with a friend, and there's a line to get out of the store. And I was like, I don't know, I found myself getting justifiably angry. I didn't really go too crazy. I just said, get in the back of the line. But why do I need to even care is what it is interesting. So, but I don't know.
Well, if justifiable anger is one
Mhm.
of your doshas, defects, that's
Yeah.
the word we learned tonight, then that's a good place to practice shama, dhamma, and uparati. And what will help that is your viveka and vairagya. So
Okay.
in the larger scheme of things, like, who the hell cares?
Well, yeah, exactly. I could have just let her cut in
And
front of me.
make everything about yoga. So
Okay.
if you miss the bus and you have to wait another 20 minutes for the next bus, it's an opportunity to practice patience. You know, if there's a bureaucrat who doesn't know what the hell they're doing, it's an opportunity to practice tolerance. If there's somebody who's cutting in line at the store, it's an opportunity to just let it go. So when we make our yoga the primary focus of our lives, then none of these experiences is wasted. And it's always an opportunity to let go and keep your heart open.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's not easy, but that's what the assignment is.
Okay.
Viveka, discrimination, being conscious enough to see what's going on. Vairagya, letting go of attachments and identification. That then is helped further through shama, dhamma, and matures into uparati, sense withdrawal. The best sense withdrawal is when, even though I'm perceiving the objects, they're not causing agitation in my mind. Make peace of mind your most prized possession. Peace of mind has to be more important than being right.
Okay. Thank you.
Good question. We have time for one more short one.
Jim, I have a question. This is Sound.
Go ahead.
What is the difference between Shama and Vairagya? Because they both seem to be related to detachment.
Well, all of these are the Vairagya helps you practice the Shama. I can't really withdraw the extroversion of my mind until I've let go of my belief in the reality of it, that it's really going to do something. I got to let go of the chocolate cake before I can pull my energy back. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So Shama is the peaceful state of mind when it's not extroverting into the sense objects. When I have that sense of being like a sieve, being empty, just letting everything pass through. I'm able to do that because I've been practicing Viveka and Vairagya. Each one of these builds on the other.
Got it. Thank you.
Hi, Jim. This is Sheila. I have a quick question.
Please.
I'm getting so lost in the technicalities of Shama and Dhamma and Vairagya, and I'm forgetting the point of why we're doing all of these things. Like, why are we practicing? I want to practice Viveka and Vairagya and Shama, but I think you answered it when you were answering somebody. The whole point of this is to make peace of mind your most prized possession.
That's a good way to do it. But why do we want to make peace of mind? We have to go back to what our problem is. Remember, we said our problem is not one of changing our being. The problem isn't one of knowing. And when the mind is agitated because of its attachment, its reactivity, its identification, I cannot see who I am. The apprehension of myself is veiled from me. So becoming a fit student turns down the frequency and the volume of thought and reaction. Think of it like if you're out at the ocean on a windy day, all the waves are storming. You go out when it's very calm and the surface of the ocean is like glass. So that's the kind of mind that's able to do the deep self-inquiry that we're going to get into. That's why we do it. Remember, Shankara said success in spiritual endeavors is entirely due to the degree of the qualifications of a fit student. So we want to develop these qualities of head and heart because that's what's going to bear fruit.
Is getting your desires met considered agitation to the mind?
You'll have to figure that one out for yourself. Depends on how you go about it.
Okay.
So what the yogi does in the end, we're kind of skipping ahead here a bit. The yogi enjoys what comes without effort. And if it doesn't come, it's no big deal. But if you're struggling to get what you want, that's agitation. You're working really hard to get your desires met. You're probably not a very happy camper. Acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. That's what the 12-step groups say. Same idea. And acceptance doesn't mean I have to like it. Acceptance means the acknowledgement of a material fact. This is the way it is. I accept it. Now, you may want to do something about it. But do it with a cool heart. Viveka, Vairagya, discrimination, dispassion, Shama, peaceful state of mind, don't let it extrovert. Dhamma, peaceful state of mind, don't let it be pushed out by your fantasies. Matures in uparati, capacity for sense withdrawal. The best uparati is when you even see the objects of the world, and it's as if you were in deep meditation. Everything stays deeply interior, deeply tuned out. Okay, we'll stop there for tonight. Good work. Good work. Let's sit for a bit. Om Namah Shivaya. So in our meditation tonight, Brahman Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahman alone is real, meaning the self. I is real. Phenomenal world is unreal or illusion. for now, not sell.